Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty provocative essay by Andrew Corner. He makes this huge claim that the future of artificial intelligence, the whole challenge of AI alignment, making sure AI doesn't harm us, it might all come down to how we understand ancient religious history. So, yeah, let's get right into it.
So the author just throws this question at you right at the start. He's asking us to forget about the code, the algorithms, all the tech stuff for a second. He's suggesting that the real danger with AI isn't in some future bug, but in the stories, the ancient religious stories we've been telling ourselves for thousands of years.
Okay, so let's really unpack this, right? The core of his argument is that our big beliefs about what's true, about history, about faith, they're not just these dusty, abstract ideas. He's saying they have very real and potentially very dangerous consequences for the artificial minds we're trying to build as we speak.
At the very heart of his essay is this powerful idea that the way a religion proves it's true isn't just a matter for theologians. He argues that it literally creates the blueprint for our entire system of human rights. And here's the kicker. That's the same blueprint an AI is going to learn from. So to build his case, he lays out what he sees as two totally different ways of thinking about truth and history. He sets up this direct comparison between some of the world's biggest faiths. Now, this is where his argument gets super specific. He basically draws a line in the sand. On one side, he puts Christianity, and he argues its entire claim to fame is tied to a single historical event you can investigate, the resurrection. In his view, that makes it uniquely falsifiable. You can actually try to prove it wrong with history. On the other side, he groups Judaism and Islam, suggesting their authority comes from this unbroken chain of tradition and divine law, which he argues you can't really challenge in the same historical way.
And to back this up, he points directly to this verse from the Bible. He calls it a kind of built-in kill switch. His whole point is that Christianity's own sacred text gives you a clear, testable hypothesis. If the resurrection didn't actually happen in history, well, then the whole thing is worthless. It's a really high-stakes, all-or-nothing kind of claim.
So, and this is the crucial point, he's saying that this willingness to be put to the test, to be checked against history, isn't a weakness at all. He thinks it's the essential, load-bearing foundation for the ideas we all take for granted today, like, inherent human dignity and individual rights.
But here is where the argument takes a really sharp turn. He says we don't actually apply the same level of historical criticism across the board. In his view, there's a huge double standard at play.
He basically argues that if you look at academia, at public conversations, you see this weird inconsistency. The historical roots of Christianity are constantly picked apart and debated, but he claims that the foundational stories of Judaism, say the Exodus, are often treated with a whole different, much more delicate standard.
So you might be asking, why would this double standard exist? Well, he offers a few connected reasons. First, the deep historical trauma of the Holocaust makes people really hesitant to critique Jewish history. Then there are the very real modern geopolitical risks. Questioning ancient land claims has consequences in the Middle East today. And finally, he suggests it's because Judaism is often seen as the story of a specific people, while Christianity's claims are treated as being for everyone.
And just to make his point clearer, the author makes this distinction between an archetype and a stereotype. He's basically saying we should be digging for these deep, universal truths that connect all of us, the archetypes. But instead, he says we just get lazy and fall back on these flat, rigid stereotypes that do nothing but put us in boxes and divide us. Okay, so this brings us to the grand finale of the whole essay. This is the moment where he takes this massive, sprawling argument about history and theology and connects it, boom, directly to the very modern, very real problem of AI alignment. He starts by asking us to think about an AI like it's a student. If you wanted to teach it a stable, human-friendly value system, what would you need? You'd need a clear textbook, right? Something with consistent rules, a solid definition of what dignity even means, and a moral compass that actually points in one direction. But, he argues, that's not what an AI is going to find when it scans all of our data, the internet, our books, everything. It's going to find a total mess. It'll see competing versions of the truth, double standards all over the place, moral words that we use without even knowing what they originally meant, and, well, a whole lot of hypocrisy.
And this right here is his big, stark warning. An AI that learns from this contradictory mess isn't going to figure out our noble ideals about human dignity. No, it's going to learn from what we actually do. It's going to spot the patterns of power,
see who really gets to make and enforce the rules. And it's going to optimize for that.
So, after all of this, what's the ultimate takeaway? What's the bottom line in this huge civilizational risk analysis? Well, according to the author, what's really at stake here is the entire concept of human rights itself.
The author doesn't mince words. He puts it pretty bluntly himself. He's claiming that once you cut the idea of human rights away from what he sees as its specific theological anchor, then those rights aren't absolute anymore. They become conditional. Dignity is something you have to negotiate. And humans, we just become variables in some big equation.
In his view, our whole modern society is basically running on fumes. We're operating on a kind of borrowed morality, an inheritance from a foundation that we now actively deny or ignore. And he argues that this creates a profoundly unstable structure, one that's just waiting for a good push to come crashing down.
And so Andrew Corner's essay leaves us with this really unsettling question to chew on. As we're racing to build these new intelligences, things that could be way more powerful than us, what are we really teaching them to value? Are we giving them a solid foundation to build on, or are we just teaching them to copy the chaos of our own contradictions? It's a question that, frankly, goes way beyond just tech, and it forces us to take a hard look at the bedrock of our own beliefs.